Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Impact Funding Summit, Day 2. We had a fabulous first day, unprecedented considering it's our first time hosting such an event. We had over 30 speakers across 14 different sessions, 1,500 participants, and it was exciting because at every session we had maybe 30, 40, 50 questions thrown at our guests, our speakers, and that showed a great level of interest as well as participation from the audience. And we expect our day 2 to be extremely exciting as well. We begin day 2 with a very, very dear friend of mine, Dr. Gayatri Vasudevan. And I don't know where to begin with Gayatri. I met her many, many years ago. I think so many years ago, I feel like I've known her all my life. She is a lady of such passion and compassion that she inspired me from the moment I met her. And I'm sure through her conversation with us today and her keynote, you will be inspired. She came from a very comfortable family, and in Bombay. And she was, I think, triggered by the events of Mandal and the Bombay riots and Latur earthquake. And she will kind of share a little bit of that early journey with us. And that motivated her to make a difference, to create impact. The reason I'm asking Gayatri to spend a little time and share with us a little bit about her, and then a little about Labournet and Sambhav, and then move on to the topic of today, which is about the migrant workers and creating or reimagining livelihood in rural India, is because when you get to know a person, it inspires you to want to do something. It's, of course, the conversation, the topic itself will give us idea and direction. But inspiration is something that we all desperately need at this time. We always needed it, but I think this time more so than ever. Gayatri is that kind of a lady. She has resilience, she has perseverance, she has, like I said, passion and compassion. She's quiet, very confident, and a very, very humble person. And it's my delight, first of all, to be her friend, and then my delight to introduce her to all of you. And a little bit about Labournet and Sambhav as well. Gayatri also was cited as one of the top 50 women in business by Business Today. And in 2020, in 2018, she was the Entrepreneur of the Year in the Social Business category. She has a doctorate in Development Studies. And in 2017, she was a speaker at the EY World Entrepreneur Forum in Monte Carlo, Monaco. And as recent as April 2020, she was a speaker at TED Connect. She's worked at the ILO, the United Nations Agency, and she started Labournet in 2006. But I'll let Gayatri share a little bit more of that journey with you, and then take us on to what Labournet has done, and during these COVID times, how much effort and work they've put in place, and the change and the impact they've made. And of course, her views on how this is going to move forward and what people are going to do, and how the migrants who have gone back, how they're going to create life. We are waiting to hear from you, Gayatri, and please take it from here.
Thank you, Durga, for the very kind introduction. So I think when Durga asked me to speak here, I was just thinking, of the times that we are in, right? I think there is the enormous hurt and pain that the country is going through. Across the world, that's true, and particularly for all of us here, it has been, I think, quite severe. Maybe not all of us sitting and listening or talking at this forum, but people who have lost their livelihoods, people who have walked back home, have all felt it. And I was just thinking back, one of the advantages of sort of hitting a mid-century is that you have time to go back in time. And I was thinking in the last 30 years, if I was to look back and say, has this been the only crisis that India has faced as a country? We as a people have faced. And I just wanted to go back a little bit in time and sort of take you through each of the crises and what it meant both for me as a person as well as India as a country, I think. The first crisis I at least faced in my adult life was the Mandal agitation in India. The Mandal agitation divided the university students, and I was in Delhi University, between pro Mandal and anti Mandal. It of course stayed away from causing the kind of economic havoc that is there today, but it did have a significant impact on the education system. How was education being viewed? How did you or I view our own communities and friends? It divided the student community straight. I don't know whether it was half or three-fourths this side and one-fourth that side, depending on wherever one was situated. And that had as far as I was concerned, it had it had a very big impact on what I chose as my career. Because I come from a fairly upper middle class family. We hadn't really seen any form of difficulty in life, very smooth going till then. And suddenly I was thrown into a world which was very traumatic. And that's how I sort of decided that, possibly what you need is a combination of a social and an economic model, both for me as a career as well as the country probably needed a very different model for development. And I'm just going to sort of jump into two other times where again there was crisis in India, right? As far as I was concerned, in all the three crises that I saw early in life were during my student life. One was the Bombay riot, post that was the Latur earthquake. Both these significantly impacted. The first, as I said, Mandal agitation was in Delhi. These two was when I was in Bombay. So if you look at both the cities are the cities that we all flock towards, whether wherever we belong to, and these cities themselves faced enormous existential crisis and had to come out of this. The cities had to think through what were they going through, and they had impact on all the people who were staying in those cities, right? And I put myself into that category of a young person starting off in a career, having to decide what's the right thing to do, what's the path that one needs to take. Is there a career? Is there a future? These are the questions which one comes to mind when you're very young and you're faced with a situation which is questioning the very basis on which you grew up. We grew up thinking education will give you a career, hopefully a well-paying career, and will take you quote unquote places, right? And what do you want to do with education? When one looks at it from an individual perspective, you put your sort of standards and timelines there, saying at this age I'd do this, at that age I'd do this, I want to achieve this. When this comes to a country, it also has impact, right? As I was telling you, the Mandal agitation stopped Delhi from functioning. The Mumbai riots again was divisive in its very way that it played out. A riot has to be, and more so is when it sort of affects every single facet of one's daily life. And the Latur earthquake was a natural calamity which brought to everyone's conscience that socially and economically we were not viable, both as administrative units as well as economic units. And I was thinking, what is the difference between then and now that is there with the COVID, right? The COVID has been just uh, something which has affected the entire world. What is the difference between the two? I think is the magnitude of the way it has affected the entire country. And I'm going to stick to India at this point of time when I speak. The magnitude has also meant that we don't know where to start. So everybody is having trouble to say, has it changed the world for permanently? Is it going to have any impact? Are we ever going to get out of it? Some people are positive. It's a it's a very small happening that is there, and then we'll get out of this. There should be no problem. Sorry, I think a lot of people are writing there's a lot of disruption and lag. I'm not sure what to do, but I'm going to continue. I see comments there, but I hope you can hear me. Not
I
really
will keep a track on that, Gayatri. You continue, and we'll
sure.
come back to them in the end.
Sure, sure. So, as I was saying, my whole thought is that as a country, what should we do? And I'm going to take, the last 2 months, and as an organization, what we have attempted to do, and see whether that has resonance. And do you feel, a similar, let me say, a similar calling that there is a hope in the, hope as you move forward. Um, so for us, obviously, like most social enterprises and civil society organizations, nothing out of the ordinary, we jumped into relief work. And I'd like to call out a few people who just jumped in and, said I'd support. Whether it's financial, my first impact investor, and he left that, was a person who just jumped in and said that, I'm going to raise funds. And I was thinking to myself, is he capable of? And then at the ground level, I found a lot of our staff members were willing to volunteer at a time where most of us were in lockdown and were sitting down, worried about our own health. The second thing that I'd like to call out was there were a lot of people who came to say together and formed a platform to say we can reimagine job roles and livelihoods, right? So whether it was as an individual effort or as a collective effort, the reason that had resonance was because there was, even as early as April 10th or so, a need for us to think there is a future which is available. The second that the third point I'd like to mention is, what does reverse migration mean for all of us, right? We have to decode that first. Is it possible for India to change economic zones? Because all our economic activity is centered around 35 cities. So, in that case, the question that all of us have to ask as people who are either in the development sector or in the businesses, do we know how to change that metric itself? Is there any other economic unit we think is viable? Do we think that we can actually be the harbingers of that change? Can we actually take the torch and move forward? Roughly, if you look at it, uh, very known facts, right? 35 cities or 40 cities at best would be the economic zones where people come in. Some of the SCZs, so maybe if you add the SCZs which are outside these 35 cities, you may end up with probably about 100 economic units in which we are functioning. Now, if we now move to saying, God, I don't want everybody in this place, right? I don't want everything, all development to be here, but I actually want to move it to 2.5 lakh villages. Is that possible? There are 2.5 lakh gram panchayats in India. Is that possible? That's really what we're asking, or rather, the COVID is asking of us. So, if the COVID was a human and was telling us, listen, I don't like your current economic and social and environmental, the way, the paradigm that you've created, please rechange this. Then how would we answer this person who is the COVID? If we think from that angle, I think we would have a lot of difficulty. We would say that I can't move from 35 or maximum 100 to to 2.5 lakh. Right? Just the numbers seem impossible to get to. Then the next question is, what's the nearest that I can get to? So then we could take various points here, right? We have 7,000 towns which are between 50,000 to a lakh population. So can we center our economic activities in a hub and spoke model around 7,000? So immediately, if you try within a year or two to have all activities move in that direction, we have ways in which we can reimagine our cities. Why I say our cities is the economic model today which is available to us is centered around a physical space. The physical space is a city, is a industrial estate, is a special economic zone. These are where we are centered, and this is what leads your social transformation, right? People move from one place to the other, either as a day migrant, either as a week migrant, or as a seasonal migrant, or permanently. Now, if that is the case, in that case, it is not a matter of kick-starting in 10 days or 15 days. It is a paradigm shift. One is asking for saying, what's the kind of development we want there? What are the few things that we need, right? We need water, we need electricity, we need skilled workforce, we need education systems, and we need health. And of course, you need food, right? If you look at it from this angle, in that case, you now break it down to say, okay, who gives me electricity? Um, is solar, can it be mapped to grids? Just now, just before I came onto this panel, an old friend wrote to me and said that it's being done in Jharkhand. I know somebody else who's attempting that in every household. Does it have to be urban alone, or can we actually redesign that? Is the technical systems good enough for that? So electricity, if we take as a thing, for me as a entrepreneur in the workspace, electrician is my first person who I would think in that context, right? As a very important stakeholder who will get jobs, and I'd start imagining, okay, how many electricians can get a job if electricity has to be stable, because you need maintenance of your small appliances, you need steady power, which could be a combination of your current electrical grid and your solar. So you'd start imagining all the job roles and start saying, who are the players who will work towards ensuring that the reverse migration, which has been exceedingly painful, and as I was saying, it hurt our social conscience, right? It hurt each one of us. Um, uh, can we actually change that to something positive? I think that's something that I would ask of us. Second is, we all say that water is a major issue, whether it's drinking water, whether it is water for use, is a commodity we've never really priced. And again, I'm going back to a conversation I had yesterday now. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of these conversations have been very recent, because a lot of people are now looking at these paradigms and saying these changes are a must. It's not something we can come back to later. So if that is the case, then again, it's not possible without actually decoding that, right? You have to have, where is water, how do you get water, is it for drinking, is it for sanitization, is it for agriculture, for what? And in that case, what kinds of job roles? So we have to break it down in terms of the kinds of I often think, life is simple, but we have to decode it in a manner in which it's implementable. uh, so in my mind, reverse migration is the problem that we are facing today, because it is a new hurt. The Bombay riots is an old hurt. The scab formed over the Bombay riots. A scab formed over the Latur earthquake. Right? These were points when it was fresh. The wound was fresh. We should have thought of solutions, but it was not big enough for us to have really done that. We went back to a normal way of working. So when we say the new normal, I think the onus on us as people who are facing it today, as young people who have entered it as a career now, as people who have sort of are midway through their career uh, paths, and as people who probably lead, would be to now ask, saying, listen, I don't want the wound to settle down. What I want is to actually reimagine it, right? I want to reimagine the way in which my social, my economic, my environmental stakeholders, and the stakeholders are not us anymore. It is the entire community that we're going to form is going to look at it. And I think that has a very direct relationship to work. Work in my mind is what defines a human being, right? And here I'd like to to sort of take you through two conversations I had during the lockdown period. One was to say that uh, a lockdown is for whom? Is it for us? Is it for the electrician? Is it for the beautician? Is it for the plumber? Is it for the loader unloader? Who is locked down? Uh, and this has relevance in terms of their economic earning, right? As well as their skill sets. So the lower that the society values your skill set, the higher the impact of the lockdown. And I hope many of you would agree with my statement. If that is the case, then the onus on us is to ensure that we actually change that paradigm, right? We want to minimize the impact of the lockdown. If we want to minimize the impact of the lockdown, and I'm using the lockdown in a very loose manner, it's not only a lockdown in that sense, it's the way of life that we're all going to move towards, with physical distancing, with the way in which we're going to tackle social interactions. In that case, we need to now rethink uh, what it means for that person, right? It means that person has lost mobility. And mobility was what was driving economic growth for that person, right? He or she moved to a city. And as I had started with saying, to those 35 cities and therefore made money. They moved outside the country and therefore they made the money. So remittances drove economic growth. Now, remittance is not there anymore. In that case, what's going to drive it? Then it's got to be a different paradigm that we have to have. So in my mind, it's going to be around health infrastructure, because we're all going to worry about, am I safe? Will I meet this person and be safe? Will I meet this object and be safe? If a vehicle is coming from a red zone to a green zone, does that traffic light of red, orange, and green define me as a person? Am I going to define my domestic worker from saying she's acceptable to me or not? So all our definitions are going to go from that perspective. In that case, we've got to see that we don't waste this opportunity which COVID has given us, right? COVID caused us harm, but COVID also told us, listen, look deep inside yourself. And when you look deep inside yourself, you're actually telling yourself, this 100 people or these 1,000 people who are on this platform have the ability to make a change. The change that's being asked of us is saying we owe it to 40 million people minimum who walked back home, who drove, took a train back home, who lost their livelihood in cities. We owe it to them to have more inclusive ways of development, inclusive ways of creating a job market. Can we do it all through charity? In my mind, not. But charity has to be it has to be married with business sense. At the end of the day, the person wants to earn. Nobody wants to be given something. As in my mind, I think you lose your self-respect when you get it free. There are things which are required free. I'm not a person who's against everything. Everything I don't think needs to be paid for, but what has to be paid for is my self-respect, right? The work that I perform for you, I need to be paid for it. I cannot do it as a daan, and that eats into who I am as a person. And the reason I make this statement is, just look at all of these people that we counted off as numbers, right? The people who went away from these 35 cities, who've lost the ability to be mobile anymore. That means mobility for them between their village to the town to the city is more difficult. I'm not saying it will not happen, but it's going to be a more, I've got to explain at home. I've got to be careful about the kinds of modes of transport I take. So anybody who comes will think 10 times before they come, and anybody who takes here will think 10 times before you take. So if these are the two realities that are there, between the two realities, we have to now drive a thought process of what changes do we want. I don't want this person to lose their skill set as a even as a loader. Just imagine who is a loader, right? When we're talking of a loader, this is this person who's carrying a 50 kg ton on his back. Between taking it off your goods train, putting it down, so the rice that you have, the wheat that comes to you, the pesticide that you use in your field is actually downloaded by this person. So that is a skill set I'm sure you or me will not be able to do. So what is it that we do for this person being back home? Are there agri-marts that we're creating? Is that an opportunity? Can it be fast enough? So I think our whole effort needs to go in the direction of reimagining space, reimagining work, reimagining education in the context, as I said, of the modernity that we want: electricity, water, food, and self respect. If we, I think, center it around this, we would find, I think, all of us collectively can find answers. As I said, catastrophes happen. To borrow Durga's term, life happens. Life happens, but what do we learn from that life, and how do we restructure our own lives to meet that is very important. We make mistakes. We will, of course, not get it right. But are we in the right direction as a society, as a people, as a company, as a country? I think are answers that we need to give to ourselves. As an organization, Labournet's decided that we would focus on two things: work to workers, which is where we started our journey. We said we need a greater focus on that, whether it's full time, whether it's entrepreneurship. We need a greater focus. We need a greater focus on, if I may say so, uh, probably cloud social security. I don't know if such a term exists, but I've been thinking, when all companies are hurting, one probably cannot give. When the state is hurting, one probably cannot give. But can we imagine, a health insurance which is more inclusive, a savings plan which one cannot even think of now, which is more inclusive? Can we think of the cover that we need to give when work is not there? So we need collective models that we need to develop. Migration is not going to stop. As I said, you can't one day switch it off and say, you know what, I don't want to come to the city completely, or I want industry to move to the village. In that case, are safe migrations also opportunities for livelihood at the rural level? Can we imagine, another partner of ours, Selco, came up with tele-livelihood centers. Is that possible to say? I was reading the other day that Sun Moksha has something which is talking of solar. So there are multiple ways in which we'll have to collaboratively look at health, electricity, and water as three important things leading to us being educated, not in the conventional manner. Today, the COVID has made it divisive. People who have access to technology, who have access to internet, to computers, are going through education. Right? Children are going through education. Adults are going through learning courses. Otherwise, we're saying, listen, you don't need it. Just don't learn. Is that the statement we're making? And as a person who's, as I said, in the cusp of an organization which runs a cusp between education and work, it hurts me deeply to say that, are we saying that a large number of us don't need continuous learning? Are we saying that we cannot give you a right to be educated just because you do not have access to technology? Is technology the only? Is it going to be a divisor? So divisive that it's going to leave us out? I think those are paradigm shifts that we have it in us to change, and that gives me hope, right? Saying that this is such a major turning point. It's time we cannot sit on our backsides. We've got to get up. When we get up, we have to get up with hope, because the world is going to go on. There is going to be a generation which is coming in, and we want to give them a much, much better customer experience than what the poor had earlier. So if they are our customers, then we owe it to them that we do better as a company. I've been learning these terms of net promoter scores, customer experience, but they've not had a good experience with us. Then it's, I think, for us to rechange that paradigm, provide all of it in a manner in which they come back and say, hey, you know what, I think this world is worth living. I think this country is taken care of. I think the society knows what it's doing. So I actually feel 2020 may be the year of hope. It may be the year which we will all, the next decade, let's redesign what we want there. So let me just stop here. So thank you so much, Durga, for giving me this opportunity
I
to.
have a question for you to answer one more. So before we have a little more time. So given all of these things that you've set aside and said that this is where we're going, and you do believe that migration will continue, probably not in the numbers we saw before, because some are going to choose to stay back. Is there some kind of a nexus between our corporate India and the government and institutions like yourself that are coming together to create that platform for change? Is there discussions happening? This cannot be something we can postpone to 5 years from now. This is going to impact people at a large level in the next 6-12 months. Is something is already initiated? Are you already working on something? You have is something the government doing that you're aware of that the industry can participate in? Is there some kind of a collaborative model that's being envisioned as we speak?
I'm not aware of a model, but I think there is the willingness to listen on both sides. I think at this point of time, I saw a lot of collaboration between the government, non-state actors, and the corporates. So both from a not-for-profit as well as from social enterprises and government, I did see a lot of people working together. And that gives me hope. Like, for example, in Labournet itself, we are we are sort of championing a cause called sanitization and hygiene entrepreneurs. So essentially, we believe that if we have them at every gram panchayat, one is talking of, and even if we take only those which are bordering the national and state highways, that is 64,000 gram panchayats. So in 64,000 gram panchayats, if they can cater to the remaining hinterland, if enterprises can be formed who are like disinfection specialists, and disinfection is not for COVID. Just take a look at your everyday life, right? If you go to any gram panchayat, what's your vision of that place? Stagnant water, which causes malaria, a dusty panchayat office, a dusty ration shop or a street shop there, an agro store, schools, anganwadis, none of it clean and therefore causing diseases. So can we actually change it on its head? And the Panchayat Raj department has been very supportive of the idea. The skills ministry has been supportive. But we need corporate India to believe in it. To say that what people can make money. And that's what we want, right? We want respectable money, which means that staying in their own towns, disinfecting it on a consistent basis and not just for COVID would mean that the look and feel of that village changes, the health indicators there change.